Austin Martin is the newest Toronto Blue Jay, the 5th overall pick Wednesday night, where the top part of the draft unfolded just the way the organization could have hoped for. More on that in a moment with Arden Zwelling, Shi Davidi, and Ben Nicholson-Smith from Sportsnet.ca and the Blue Jays on Sportsnet. But first, guys, the kid. College kid, Vanderbilt kid, hungry kid. And when you heard his line to Jess Mendoza earlier tonight, he said, "I hate losing more than I like winning." You think to yourself, well, hey, Austin Martin and Bo Bichette are going to get along just fine. Come to find out, Shi, go figure, the two were actually teammates back in the day.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, Arash, when you said things couldn't have worked out for the Blue Jays from their perspective. And they were a bit surprised that Martin was available to them. This was not what was supposed to happen. He was supposed to go to the Baltimore Orioles at number 2. He's widely considered the best pure hitter available in the draft. And for whatever reason, we'll figure out what the Baltimore Orioles are up to as the draft progresses. But he ended up falling, and suddenly the Blue Jays, with holders of the number 5 pick, found themselves with this windfall of Martin available, and they didn't hesitate. This was somebody that they believe can be an impactful offensive player. Where he fits on the diamond is a bit of question mark, but you go for the bat, and you think about adding him to the mix with Bichette, Guerrero, Kevin Biggio, Danny Jansen, all the other kids, and he could time up relatively well with that group.
Yeah, it was interesting. We spoke on Wednesday night with Shane Farrell, who's the amateur scouting director of the Blue Jays. He said, we were surprised with the shakeup with the 2 and 3 pick. He said, we spent a lot of time on the top 10 players on the draft. That's really where they honed in on, and they trusted their board. They trusted the scouts. Farrell said that Martin, by pick number 5, was the best player available on the board for the Blue Jays at that time. Shi, you mentioned the bat. Let's talk offense. Let's take a look at the numbers from his sophomore season, and this is pretty impressive. It's from 2019 when Vanderbilt won the College World Series. Martin, leader in the SEC in those categories. Swing already has loft. Exit velocity suggests there is plus power in that bat. But Arden, it's the patience at the plate that the Blue Jays noticed too.
Yeah, I think you're right, Arash. And it really struck me when Tim Corbin, who was the head coach at Vanderbilt University and was part of MLB Network's draft coverage, showed this really cool highlight reel after Austin Martin was drafted. And it wasn't, home runs or doubles off the wall. It was Austin Martin taking pitches, tough pitcher's pitches just off the plate in hitters' counts that really demonstrate how polished his plate discipline is. And I bet that advanced approach is one of the things the Blue Jays really liked about him. This is a guy who walked more than he struck out over his college career, nearly a 500 on-base percentage, extremely high contact rate. He comes preloaded with a really good idea of how to manage the strike zone, and that stands in stark contrast to some of the uncompetitive at-bats we watched from Blue Jays hitters last season. It was such an issue that the club actually made two-strike approach a focus for hitters this spring. So it seems like Austin Martin isn't the type of player who the Blue Jays are going to have to worry about striking out too much.
Yeah, on the Blue Jays evaluation of Martin, they have well above average hitter, manages strike zone well, really good bat-to-ball skills. So Ben Nicholson-Smith, we're talking about a kid who has all of that, who played third base and outfield at Vandy, was announced by Rob Manfred as a shortstop, but at the pro level, the Blue Jays non-committal to where he's going to play for now at the professional level.
Right, and they have time to figure that out. It might not be all that much time if this progression goes the way they're hoping, but they have a little bit of time. So you look at a guy who has a lot of versatility. As a freshman at Vanderbilt, he started games at 6 different positions. You look at a guy who could play second, third, a little bit of center field, a little bit of shortstop. But ultimately, if you can hit the way the Blue Jays hope he can hit, then he is going to push someone out of a position. An injury will open something up. They're not going to have any trouble finding room for him in the lineup if he can come close to fulfilling his potential as the hitting prospect that he is.
Yeah, the Blue Jay scouts have been eyeing Martin since he was a high schooler in Jacksonville, Florida. And, the thought is, and the plan always is, that, you draft a kid, he goes to Dunedin, into the program he goes, the development program, but of course the COVID world shakes the whole thing up. Ben, they don't know what's going to happen now with him, but I guess the question becomes, Over the last few years, Blue Jay fans were following Bo and Vlad the whole way up. When may Austin Martin be on the radar of Blue Jay fans on his path to the major leagues?
Well, of course, a couple caveats here. One, there's no minor league season expected in 2020. And two, a lot of things can happen, even for really highly regarded prospects. But if you want to look for a best case scenario, and it's draft day, I mean, there's if you can't do that now, when can you dream on these guys? Andrew Benintendi was selected in the first round in 2015. And if you look at him, he's another college hitter, didn't have a ton of power, but had exceptional bat-to-ball skills. So you have some similarities as far as the player. And if you look at the timeline, Benintendi was in the major leagues by 2016. He was a very productive player by 2017. So that's kind of the best case scenario. We'll see if it works that way, of course, but there's a timeline for Jays fans to dream on.
Arden, yeah, the dream is there, of course, but we're also talking about a kid who, while 21 years old, hasn't played a lot of baseball lately because of the health crisis. He needs some reps, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely, Arash. And it's my biggest question, not only with Austin Martin, but with Jordan Groshans and Alek Manoah and Simeon Woods-Richardson and all of the young players that this organization is dreaming on for the future. You mentioned the development system earlier on. The Blue Jays have spent a lot of resources and a lot of time installing this development system over the last several years that they hoped was going to produce productive big leaguers, whether to play for what they hope is a contending team or to use in trades to acquire more win now players. And those players just aren't getting reps right now. Austin Martin played 16 games this year, only 69 plate appearances. This is a guy who's going to need more reps. He's going to be seeing better pitching than he's ever seen before in his life. He's going to need that exposure in order to keep improving. So does that happen in an instructional league of some sort, and some sort of a supercharged fall league in Arizona or Florida later on this year? I'm really interested to see how this plays out.
So we know the Blue Jays like the kid, and it was interesting listening to Farrell. He said, you know, Martin's a baseball rat. He loves to be in the cage. He loves to go into work. Loves to go to work. Over the years, we've gotten a sense that the Blue Jays aren't so fond of Mr. Martin's agent. An entire decade went without the Blue Jays drafting a Scott Boras client. James Paxton, 2009, the Jays took him. He didn't sign. Boras has said Toronto has the blue flu. There was believed to be acrimony between Boras and Paul Beeston for a little while. We just saw Hyun-Jin Ryu sign. Now this kid is have they turned the page here? Is that what we're watching unfold?
You know, in the backdrop of all this, that to me is a really intriguing part of this selection, is that, you know, the Blue Jays went into business with Scott Boras in a way that they never have before in signing Ryu. And as you mentioned, no Boras draft picks since Paxton. And when you think about influential agents, someone who controls some of the best players in the game, to not select one of his players in 10 consecutive drafts, I mean, that's really remarkable. So, you know, if the stars had aligned differently, that streak might have gone to 11 if Martin hadn't been available to them. But the fact that they didn't let that stop them from taking him, to me, is a significant point of progress for this franchise. It says that they're not afraid to get into a potential negotiation situation where it's going to be difficult to sign a player, and that they're willing, if they have to, ante up to get some of the best talent. So to me, this element of this pick is a particularly intriguing backdrop because of what it says of where the Blue Jays are headed from a business standpoint.
Bo Bichette's former teammate will be reunited with him with the Blue Jays. An emotional night for Austin Martin and his family, taken 5th overall by Toronto in the 2020 Major League Baseball Draft.